The morning of December 4th, 1970, began like any other in the Bahamas. Quiet, warm, and deceptively peaceful. A faint breeze carried the scent of salt and mangrove through the airfield at Andros Island, where a young pilot named Bruce Gernon prepared for what should have been a routine flight. The route was simple, familiar. From Andros to Palm Beach, Florida, barely 90 minutes in the air. Bruce was only 23 years old, but already an experienced aviator. He had learned to fly alongside his father, also named Bruce, who now sat in the right seat beside him. They were joined by Chuck Lafayette, a family friend and business associate. Together, they were partners in a small real estate venture in the Bahamas, accustomed to hopping between the islands in their Beechcraft Bonanza A-36, a sleek single-engined aircraft built for reliability and precision. The morning sky was flawless, an endless dome of light blue stretching from sea to horizon. The forecast from Miami Center had promised clear weather, no storms, no turbulence. As he performed his final pre-flight checks, Gernon felt a subtle sense of anticipation, something he couldn't quite explain. It felt like the air was heavier that day, he would later recall, like the sky was waiting for something. At 8 a.m., he pushed the throttle forward. The propeller roared to life, and the Bonanza accelerated smoothly down the runway. Moments later, the wheels lifted off the ground, and the aircraft climbed steadily over the glimmering waters of the Caribbean. For Gernon, flying was freedom, an art form between logic and instinct. He had spent years mastering the delicate balance between wind, weight, and sky. The cockpit was his element, the instruments his language. But that morning, something in the rhythm of the world felt slightly off. The air shimmered faintly, like heat rising from pavement. The horizon seemed distorted, blurred at the edges. He adjusted altitude, 9,500 feet, and leveled off. Everything appeared stable. The sun reflected off the sea like polished glass, blinding and beautiful. He took a deep breath, glancing at his father, who smiled back. It was, by every measure, a perfect flight. Until it wasn't. About 30 miles east of Andros Island, something caught Bruce's eye. A cloud unlike he had ever seen before. It was enormous, rising vertically from the ocean like a white tower, its edges unnaturally defined. The longer he looked, the more he realized it wasn't just a cloud. It was circular, almost symmetrical, and it didn't drift like others did. It hovered, still, deliberate, silent. He tapped the altimeter. The reading held steady. "Must be an isolated cumulus," he said aloud, more to reassure himself than his passengers. But even from miles away, the formation seemed alive. As they flew closer, the sunlight dimmed slightly, though there were no other clouds in the sky. The radio crackled faintly with static, then cleared again. He contacted Miami Center. Bonanza N1972 Bravo reporting unusual cloud formation ahead, roughly 30 miles north of Andros. "Copy that, N1972 Bravo. Radar shows clear skies in your area. Proceed as planned." Gernon hesitated. He double-checked the navigation instruments, then the weather radar. Nothing. But he could see it. The cloud was real, and it was expanding. Within minutes, the formation began to change shape. The base thickened, stretching horizontally into what looked like an enormous ring suspended over the ocean. It wasn't violent or storm-like. It was strangely graceful, rotating slowly in complete silence. "Dad, look at that," he said, his voice quieter now. His father leaned forward. "That's no ordinary weather system," he muttered. The Bonanza approached the edge of the formation. Gernon reduced speed slightly and prepared to divert if necessary. but the sky behind them was shifting too. Smaller clouds rising fast, merging, closing their path of retreat. It was as if the atmosphere itself were rearranging, folding them inward. The calm air trembled. Later, investigators would ask him to describe the scene in detail. He said it was like flying toward a living vortex, a perfectly symmetrical tunnel of cloud, glowing faintly from within, with flickers of lightning illuminating its walls. No thunder, no turbulence, no sound. It was, in his words, a doorway in the sky. At 8:30 a.m., the bonanza crossed into shadow. The horizon disappeared, the sunlight vanished, and the instruments, so precise, so reliable, began to tremble. Gernon adjusted the controls, steady hands masking the knot forming in his stomach. Miami Center, Bonanza N1972 Bravo entering heavy formation, requesting radar confirmation. Static. He tried again. Nothing. The radio was dead. The compass needle spun in circles, and the air around them began to glow with a pale gray light, pulsing faintly like static electricity. For the first time, Bruce Gernon, the man who trusted machines, charts, and science, felt something that had no place in the cockpit: fear. What he didn't know was that he was about to experience something no pilot had ever lived to describe before. He wasn't entering a storm. He was entering a phenomenon that would change aviation history.
Inside the cockpit, the hum of the engine was the only sound that still felt real. The rest, the light, the air, the horizon, had vanished. As the Bonanza entered the swirling formation, it was as though the laws of the sky had been rewritten. Outside, walls of cloud wrapped around the aircraft in a perfect spiral, forming a tunnel that seemed to stretch infinitely in both directions. There was no thunder, no turbulence, just an eerie, pulsating light radiating from the vapor itself. The cockpit was bathed in pale silver. Every metal surface seemed to shimmer with electricity. Bruce gripped the yoke, his muscles tense. He had flown through storms before. He knew what chaos felt like in the air. But this wasn't chaos. It was order, precise, geometric, and unnatural. "Dad, you see in this?" he asked. His father nodded, eyes wide. "Just stay level, son. Keep us straight." The plane's artificial horizon flickered, then froze. The compass needle spun slowly, then jerked to a stop. The altimeter bounced between readings as if confused. Only the engine responded faithfully, its sound steady, like a heartbeat in a void. They were inside the cloud tunnel, a phenomenon no human had ever recorded before. The tunnel's walls rotated counterclockwise, forming concentric rings that pulsed faintly, as though alive. Lightning flashed inside, but silently. No crack of thunder followed, only a low, continuous vibration that Bruce could feel through his fingertips on the controls. The men sat in silence, each watching the surreal light show beyond the windshield. Time itself felt distorted. Seconds stretched, minutes blurred. Later, Gernon would struggle to describe it. He said it was like being outside of time. There was no sense of distance, no sense of movement, just being. He wanted to turn around, but when he glanced over his shoulder, there was nothing. No exit, no sunlight, only the same gray spiral receding endlessly behind them. For a moment, panic threatened to rise. Then instinct returned. He adjusted the throttle, trimming slightly downward to maintain altitude, but the altimeter needle began to fall rapidly, even though he hadn't lost lift. He said, "Something's wrong. We're not descending, but it says we are." His father checked the instruments. He said, "They're lying to us." They pressed on, deeper into the vortex. About halfway through, a strange phenomenon began. Thin lines of dark energy, like vapor trails, started forming along the walls of the tunnel, perfectly straight, stretching forward into infinity. They resembled black veins or cracks in the air, radiating light at their edges. The bonanza seemed to follow them naturally, as though they were magnetic tracks guiding the plane. The cloud outside was luminous, but without a source. There was no visible sun, no shadow, no up or down. It was a dimension of light and silence. Then, abruptly, the tunnel began to narrow. The circular walls tightened around the aircraft, the rotation quickened, the hum deepened to a throbbing resonance that vibrated through the cockpit frame. The three men could feel the pressure in their chests like invisible hands pressing inward. Bruce leaned forward, scanning the path ahead. A small opening appeared in the distance, a dark oval pulsing faintly like an iris. It seemed to be the tunnel's end. He pushed the throttle forward, accelerating toward it. As they approached, the light around them intensified. Every instrument on the panel flickered wildly. The radio emitted a shriek of static and then went dead completely. Bruce's hands trembled, not from fear, but from the electric charge in the air. Even their hair stood on end. His father shouted, "I think we're losing control." Bruce replied, "Hold on." At 8:45 a.m., the bonanza shot through the dark oval at the tunnel's end, and everything changed. The gray light vanished, replaced by total blackness. For 2 seconds there was nothing but silence, no horizon, no color, no movement. It was as if the plane had passed through the absence of existence itself. Then, light, brilliant, blinding white. The bonanza burst into open sky. But the sky they entered wasn't the one they had left. The clouds behind them were gone. The sun was directly overhead, impossible given their heading. And below, instead of turquoise ocean, stretched a vast blanket of white haze, completely obscuring the sea. Bruce blinked. Where are we? He reached for the navigation instruments, but the compass continued to spin. The gyroscope refused to stabilize. Even the GPS signal, which had always been flawless, was gone. Every piece of modern technology had gone silent, as if the aircraft existed in a space unrecognized by the Earth itself. He climbed higher, searching for a visual reference, but the haze thickened. It wasn't fog, it was luminous, glowing faintly, filled with static, and it clung to the plane, following every turn, every ascent, as though attached to it. It was the beginning of what Gernon would later call the electronic fog. He took a deep breath, forcing calm. He was trained for emergencies. He knew how to think through panic. But this wasn't mechanical failure. This was something else, something that made no sense. He turned to his father. "We're already over Miami." His father stared. "That's impossible." They had crossed more than 100 miles of ocean instantly. Bruce Gernon didn't know it yet, but he had just performed the first documented spatial displacement in aviation history. And the nightmare wasn't over.
When the light finally cleared, the world outside the cockpit had changed completely. The sea was no longer visible. Only a flat, glowing blanket of fog stretched endlessly below them, shining faintly as though it emitted its own light. The sky above was a strange, muted gray, the horizon gone. It was like flying inside the reflection of a dream. Bruce Gernon blinked against the brightness. His instruments refused to cooperate. The compass spun uselessly, the altimeter jumped erratically, and even the artificial horizon tilted back and forth like a pendulum. Only the engine remained loyal, its rhythmic drone echoing through the silence. Where exactly?" Chuck Lafayette asked, breaking the quiet. Bruce shook his head. "I don't know. There's no radio, no radar, no horizon." He tried again to call Miami Center. Nothing but static. The world outside was so luminous that it seemed to erase the concept of distance. He leveled the wings and checked the clock. 8:55 a.m. Barely 55 minutes since takeoff. By every calculation, they should still be well over open water, with at least 40 minutes of flight ahead. But through the dense glow, something began to appear. An outline, faint at first, then sharper. A stretch of coastline. "Dad," Bruce said quietly. "Look!" Below them, the shape of Florida's eastern shore emerged through the haze. It didn't make sense. They were already there. The cloud clung to the aircraft like a living thing. It wrapped around the wings, the nose, even the propeller, distorting the air like heat over desert sand. Bruce tried to climb out of it, but the haze followed. He descended. Still, it followed. Then, without warning, the fog began to dissolve, not gradually, but suddenly, like a curtain ripped open. In one instant, the Bonanza was flying under clear blue sky. The sea below sparkled, the horizon returned, and the instruments came back to life. Bruce blinked, disoriented. He reached for the radio. "Miami Center, this is Bonanza, 1972 Bravo. Do you read?" A pause, then a voice, clear and startled. "Bonanza 1972 Bravo, we have you on radar now. Where have you been? You just appeared over Miami." Bruce froze. "Repeat that," he said. The controller replied, "You just appeared. 1 second, there was nothing. Then you were on our screen, 50 miles offshore." He checked his watch again. 9:05 a.m. The flight from Andros Island to Miami typically took an hour and a half. Bruce had done it dozens of times, but this time it had only taken 47 minutes, and according to both radar and his own navigation, he had somehow crossed over 250 miles of ocean in less than half the expected time. Even if the wind had been perfect, even if the instruments had malfunctioned, no known aircraft of that type could move that fast. It was as if he had flown through a shortcut in space, or time itself. As he approached Miami, Bruce scanned the instruments again. The fuel readings were consistent with a standard 90-minute flight, not the shortened time shown by his clock. The GPS data, rudimentary in 1970 but still functional, showed a perfect linear path from Andros to Miami. No deviation, no curve, no missing segments. Yet the radar logs later confirmed his plane had vanished for nearly 10 minutes before reappearing instantaneously 50 miles offshore. The Federal Aviation Administration had no explanation. No weather anomalies, no signal interference, no radar shadow. Just absence. He taxied down the runway at Palm Beach International in silence. His passengers were pale, quiet, and visibly shaken. The plane itself looked untouched. No electrical burns, no physical strain, but inside, something had changed. Bruce sat for a moment in the cockpit after shutting down the engine, staring at the instruments. They looked ordinary now, obedient, precise, familiar. The same tools that had betrayed him inside the fog now displayed perfect stability. His father finally spoke. "Let's never talk about this again," he said, forcing a faint smile. But Bruce couldn't let it go. He knew something extraordinary had happened, something no flight manual could explain. He didn't just arrive early. He had skipped time. Later, when questioned by aviation officials, his radar data became the centerpiece of the mystery. The official transcript from Miami Center noted that his aircraft had disappeared from all screens for roughly 10 minutes, reappearing over Miami at an impossible trajectory and speed. But every attempt to recreate the data failed. Meteorologists couldn't explain the fog structure, physicists dismissed the idea of time distortion, but none could account for the radar gap.
Whatever the electronic fog was, it didn't behave like any known storm, cloud, or electromagnetic phenomenon. Bruce Gernon had flown through something the world didn't yet have a name for, and it had followed him home.
When Bruce Gernon stepped out of the cockpit, the sunlight of Palm Beach felt unreal, too bright, too normal. The sounds of engines, voices, and luggage carts were the same as always, yet something in the air seemed off. It was as if time itself had reset, leaving him and his passengers slightly out of sync with the rest of the world. They walked across the tarmac without speaking. No one dared to say what all three were thinking. They had left Andros Island at 8 o'clock in the morning. They had flown through something that should not exist, and now, less than an hour later, they were standing on the other side of the ocean, alive, unharmed, but changed. Bruce filed his flight report as usual, though he hesitated before writing the time of arrival. 9:06 a.m. He stared at the numbers for several seconds. It didn't make sense. The fuel consumption, the engine temperature, even the wear on the propeller, all indicated a typical 90-minute journey. But the clock insisted otherwise. They had crossed the Atlantic sector in record time, a record that defied physics. Within days, the story began to spread quietly among pilots and local aviation circles. Some laughed it off, assuming instrument failure or exaggeration. Others weren't so quick to dismiss it. Radar logs from Miami Center confirmed what Gernon had claimed. His aircraft had disappeared from all screens for approximately 10 minutes, then reappeared suddenly near Miami, moving faster than any Beechcraft Bonanza could possibly travel. No weather phenomena had been detected that day. No electrical interference, no anomalies, except Bruce Gernon. Investigators from the Federal Aviation Administration interviewed him extensively. They inspected the plane, tested the instruments, even questioned his passengers separately. Every answer matched. Every detail was consistent. The FAA filed the case, but never released an official explanation. Unofficially, it was labeled Spatial and Temporal Anomaly, Unverified. Bruce knew what that meant. They had no idea. For months, he replayed the event in his mind. He traced every step of the flight, every angle, every sound of the engine. He tried to recall what the light inside the tunnel looked like, how it had pulsed, how it had changed color near the exit. He wondered if it was atmospheric plasma or a magnetic vortex or something beyond science altogether. At night, he would wake up and sketch diagrams of the tunnel, spirals, rings, arcs, all leading into one central void. He began to call it the electronic fog. It wasn't just a description, it was a theory. He believed the fog was a form of charged electromagnetic energy capable of distorting radar signals, disabling instruments, and perhaps even bending the flow of time. In later years, researchers would refer to it as a localized energy distortion field, but in 1970, no one had a vocabulary for such things. Bruce Gernon did what pilots are trained to do. He documented everything. He wrote a detailed report of the event, complete with weather conditions, coordinates, and timestamps. He even reconstructed the radar path using official data. His precision left little room for imagination, and that's what made his story so disturbing. If it wasn't a storm, and it wasn't an illusion, then what was it? The media eventually caught wind of the story. By 1972, newspapers and magazines began referring to him as the man who flew through the Bermuda Triangle and lived. Reporters crowded him for interviews, and television shows tried to dramatize his experience. But Bruce refused sensationalism. He wasn't looking for fame, only for understanding. He teamed up with Rob McGregor, a writer fascinated by unexplained phenomena, and together they began compiling years of research and eyewitness accounts of similar experiences. In 2005, they published the book The Fog, a never-before-published theory of the Bermuda Triangle phenomenon. It combines scientific data, flight records, and first-hand accounts, including Bruce's, to build one of the most comprehensive studies ever made on the triangle. The conclusion was unsettling. Whatever he had encountered in 1970 wasn't unique. Other pilots and sailors had reported similar effects: navigation loss, spatial disorientation, sudden time gaps. But Bruce Gernon was the first to come out the other side and live to tell it with verifiable data. In private, though, he struggled. For years, he felt as though the fog had never truly left him. He described subtle electrical sensations when flying through certain weather systems, as if something deep in the atmosphere recognized him. He couldn't explain it, but he felt watched, not by people, but by the sky itself. Friends and colleagues told him to move on, to forget it, but Bruce couldn't. He knew that what happened in 1970 was more than a coincidence, more than a weather anomaly. It was a glimpse into something hidden beneath the surface of reality, a truth that humanity wasn't yet ready to confront.
More than 5 decades have passed since that morning in 1970, yet Bruce Gernon's story continues to haunt the edges of scientific understanding. He didn't become a celebrity, nor did he seek attention. He became something far rarer, a witness to the unknown, a man who looked into the heart of a mystery and came back alive. Throughout his life, he continued flying. He said the cockpit still felt like home, though the sky no longer looked the same. Every time he crossed the waters of the Bahamas, he felt a quiet awareness, as if the triangle itself was watching, waiting, remembering. He would glance at his instruments just to make sure they still behaved, and then allow the memory to drift like the wind, distant but never gone. In interviews, Bruce often spoke calmly, methodically, even scientifically. He didn't claim alien involvement, time travel, or portals to other dimensions. He simply described what he saw, with the same precision that kept him alive that day. To him, the electronic fog was a natural phenomenon, perhaps a unique combination of atmospheric electricity, magnetism, and plasma that could distort space and time in ways not yet understood. His theory attracted physicists, meteorologists, and skeptics alike. Some believed he had stumbled upon a localized wormhole, a temporary rift in the electromagnetic field of the Earth. Others said it was mass hallucination or instrument error. But none could explain the radar gap, the flight time, and the seamless transition across hundreds of miles. Whatever it was, it had changed the way the world looked at the Bermuda Triangle. Over the years, documentaries, research programs, and online debates continued to circle around his experience. NASA engineers analyzed the data. Aviation historians revisited radar logs. Even skeptics admitted the case was the most credible unexplained event in the history of the triangle. And yet, Bruce never tried to sell his story as proof of the paranormal. He was, at heart, a man of reason, a pilot, not a prophet. He said once, "Maybe it wasn't supernatural at all. Maybe we just don't yet understand the sky we fly through." That sentence became his legacy, the bridge between mystery and science. In his final years, Bruce lived quietly in Florida, near the same stretch of coast where he had emerged from the fog decades earlier. He continued giving lectures,
showing diagrams of the tunnel, describing its perfect geometry, and reminding audiences that the truth didn't have to be impossible, only undiscovered. He spoke softly, with that same calm tone that had carried him through the impossible storm. He passed away in 2023, leaving behind his detailed notes, drawings, and the unwavering belief that his encounter had meaning, not just for him, but for all who seek to understand the boundaries of human knowledge. Today, pilots still fly over the same route, unaware that beneath their wings lies the invisible corridor where Bruce Gernon once vanished. The sea glimmers, the air hums, and the sky looks ordinary. But somewhere out there, beyond sight and reason, the electronic fog might still drift, waiting for another traveler brave enough to enter. And so, the question remains: did Bruce Gernon slip through a natural vortex, a rare electromagnetic rift, or did he momentarily step outside of time itself? Science has yet to decide. But every pilot who crosses that stretch of ocean knows his name. And every traveler who looks down at the vast, glittering water feels the same quiet wonder that he must have felt that morning, when the world paused and reality bent. The Bermuda Triangle is still there, silent, endless, watching. And the sky keeps its secrets well. Some mysteries are not meant to be solved, only remembered. Subscribe and step with us into the unknown.